Good afternoon. Welcome to this FAO Science and Innovation Forum event on connecting forests and people. Good morning, good afternoon, I should say, good evening to wherever you are joining from in the world. Thank you for taking a little bit out of your mornings, afternoons, and evenings to spend some time with us here today. In the next nearly 2 hours, or 1 hour and 45 minutes, we will hear a series of presentations and discussions about how data, technology, and, like the forum title says, science and innovation, are being brought to bear on forest monitoring as part of a larger effort to improve the environment and ultimately, I would say, our life on Earth. My name is Eric Lindquist. I'm a forestry officer here at FAO. And we have a very busy schedule, so I don't have time for any ado on my part. So I'd like to now just go ahead and start the program off by introducing Ms. Beth Crawford. Ms. Crawford is the Director of FAO Office of Innovation. Beth, the floor is yours, and it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here today with all of you. So science and innovation are powerful components of evidence-based decision-making at all levels and are key to transforming agri-food systems and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Innovations in agriculture cut across all dimensions of the production cycle along the entire value chain, including, of course, forestry management. It is possible to transform the global food system so that agriculture and forests grow together rather than one growing at the expense of the other. Within this framework, digital technologies are key accelerators of agri-food systems transformation and rural development. The use of digital technologies linked to social, economic, institutional, and policy processes, as well as business models and innovative financing, can have a positive impact on the production, nutrition, environment, and livelihoods of forest-dependent communities. At today's event, Connecting Forest and People, we will have the opportunity to hear more about the innovative work FAO and key partners are doing to interlink challenges facing forests and forest-proximate peoples worldwide. In particular, key initiatives for the democratization of forest-related data and information. Knowledge is crucial to ensure forests are preserved, sustainably managed, and restored. Accurate, up-to-date, transparent information on forests contributes to better reporting, better policy formulation, and decision-making at all levels. FAO is a member of the Digital Public Goods Alliance, which underscores FAO's commitment to the development and championing of digital public goods that will help achieve sustainable agri-food systems and contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. FAO digital public goods include the hand-in-hand geospatial platform and open forest tools such as SAPOL and Collect Earth Online, whose application examples we will hear about in a few minutes. FAO aims to massify digital benefits to make sure that no one is left behind. It does this by promoting the use and adoption of digital technologies and platforms while ensuring inclusivity and narrowing the digital divide between countries and regions through affordable access to digital technologies and capacity development opportunities. Based on this commitment and recognition of the importance of digital transformation for the agri-food sector, including the forestry sector, FAO developed the first ever science and innovation strategy. It not only represents a key tool for the implementation of the FAO Strategic Framework 2022-31, but it will also reinforce FAO's other new strategy on climate change, a framework for FAO-led forest initiatives. Together, these will ensure the transformation of agri-food systems for better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life, leaving no one behind. This event, organized by the FAO Forestry Division in contribution to the Science and Innovation Forum, demonstrates that the forestry sector, formed by a diversity of stakeholders, such as technicians, scientists, academics, private and public sector professionals, and including, of course, young professionals, are making great strides towards more innovative, cross-sectoral, and multi-stakeholder approaches. I wish you all enriching discussions and interaction. Let's make the most of this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beth, for those opening remarks. Next, we will have remarks by the Deputy Director of the Forestry Division, Mr. Ewald Ramsteiner. We were supposed to have remarks by Tina Vahanen, but she unfortunately could not make it today, so thank you, Ewald, for stepping in at the last minute. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. Connecting forests and people. Forests and people, great topic. There's a myth that that nature, in a way, science and innovation, nature is the most magnificent innovator of all. There is also this idea that forest is nature, and therefore foresters don't need to innovate because, well, basically nature does it for them. But it's not really that simple, and one of the things that we want to do in this event is to just show how innovative our forestry colleagues are, both in the forestry division here at FAO, but also with these many colleagues that work with them. So there is a huge amount of new science and technology and innovation that is being put on the forefront of what we are doing, and we are really happy to have some of these colleagues here and show this to us and discuss with us all. So I'm really looking forward to be. And de facto, I mean, we do need science, technology, and innovation really to make this difference that we all need to scale up and accelerate this transition of the agri-food systems that FAO has as its major goals. So without having the technology and using it well, we will not make the progress that, in a way, the world community has set up for themselves with the SDGs. And I think you mentioned we will need it for the life on the planet, or similar. Yes, we do. We have now a strategic framework 2022 to 31 that is really geared to that direction, transforming agri-food systems. How do you do that in practice without science and innovation? And how do you do that in a way that is put at scale and in a speed that makes it happen by 2030? That's the issue that we have in terms of becoming more efficient, more inclusive, also we will touch on that, more resilient and more sustainable. One of the things that is in the center of that all is data and innovation. That is one of the essential parts that I think we will discuss today. Accurate, up-to-date, transparent data. We used to say quite for some years now, better data, better decisions. And I think that brings it to a short slogan that still rings very true. Better data, better decisions. So without a lot of the things that we will hear now in this next hour and a bit, will rhyme with this fairly nicely. There is a lot of new and innovative tools and platforms that use new technology that we have seen mushrooming almost in recent years. And thanks to our very innovative colleagues and technique-savvy colleagues of the forestry division, I think FAO is amongst those that are leading a lot of this work and putting it to work. And these tools and platforms provide new opportunities for practitioners to leverage the best available methods, to make the right decisions, to look at the right things, and to move things the way we all want to have it moved, including on, okay, what happens to forests, what happens to forest cover, what happens to land use, how do we monitor the changes that happen to them, and how do we make the right decisions as decision makers. Many of these decision makers are actually practitioners that don't necessarily always need the full background of what is happening at the technological front. So FAO supports a lot of members in terms of the capacity development of how they can use those tools for the applications at all these levels, from subnational community levels, decision makers, to subnational in projects, to national, to regional, and certainly also to global. Reporting, forest monitoring, an abbreviation that you might not hear the first time, MRV, monitoring, reporting, verification, generation of local data. It includes helping countries at all of those levels, at the global levels, report key global commitments like the SDGs, like the UN Global Forest Goals, the Paris Agreements, forest biodiversity and restoration targets, and a lot of other things that relate not only to forests but also to people, livelihoods, contribution to poverty, income opportunities. How do we get away from the effects of COVID? How do we address the conflicts and the impacts of these conflicts on poverty? A lot of these things needs right decision on forests and trees. One of the things that I think we are really proud of is the Open Forest Initiative, one of those successful open source digital public tools. It's for free in a way for everybody to use it. It's non-proprietary, and this is what FAO stands for. Over 90% of RED+ submissions have used that tool and platforms such as that mentioned ones, CEPAL and Collect Earth Online, to submit as governments on the commitments to reduce emissions, 11.5 billion tons to be exact. Well, that is one thing that a tool of FAO with their partners have been able to put to work, and it really makes a huge difference to how we deal with this issue, climate change, on our planet. So that work on open forests or a set of free and open source solutions, we have been working for more than 10 years now, and this has really been an area where we see a huge payoff. And open forest is one of the first open source initiatives that we have pushed forward here in FAO. Now, this is mainstreamed across the organization. There's a lot of effort on these type of things across using the experience of CEPAL and Collect Earth and open forest tools, of which we will hear a bit more. And I promise I'll come to a close fairly soon. But we have used these also to democratize the access to data, to make it available, make it more transparent, use remote sensing data and computing platforms to effectively support decision makers when they make decisions on forest management. And I think they need these data to be accurate and transparent. Big data is also used to address deforestation, to identify deforestation hotspots or fire hotspots or forest degradation. It addresses identification of illegal logging hotspots, but not only on the problem side of what do we want to stop. It also helps on the side of solutions, tools that make it possible to trace and track commodity flows, to document that this comes from legal and sustainable sources, or that we actually provide with forests, or communities provide with forests, ecosystem services like storing carbon as a solution that forests provide. So a lot of these would not be possible without some of the things that we talk about and hear about. Just to conclude, I believe we're on the right track with this. We are committed to further push science, technology and innovation as one of the main levers of scaling up and accelerating the transition to agri-food systems that the whole organization is keen to get better and more effective on, because we will need it. And there is a lot of work ahead, but there is, as you will see, a lot of potential also, certainly also challenges of how to do this in practice and do this in ways that decision makers on the ground can benefit from it. So let me conclude here by I'll have both ears open, and I'll really look forward to hearing from the colleagues, from your discussions. I hope colleagues online also have the opportunity to come in to make this a lively exchange of what is happening with science and innovation and forestry. It's exciting, but just let me put to the first word here, which I think is also very important, that is youth action. We'll need the innovation capacity of youth to make that a sustainable effort going forward to a better environment, a better production, a better nutrition, and a better life for us all, as we say. Back to you, and I'm excited to the next phase of that program.
Thank you so much, Ewald. And thank you both for setting the stage for why what we're about to hear from a number of different people will be so important to what we do here at FAO and outside. Today, our keynote presentation will be given by Ms. Marte Senstad. She is a senior advisor for Norway's International Climate and Forest Initiative, or NICFI. And Marte, we're very excited to have you here virtually somewhere with us today, and look forward to your there you are, and look forward very much to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I understand that my presentation will be coming up very soon.
So we hope. Yes.
If you can confirm that you can see it. Thank you very much. So yes, I have been invited to speak about the importance of data in meeting major forest-related development objectives. And next. And I will start off with a few words on why forest is so important to the challenges that we are facing today. I'll also share how Norway's International Climate and Forest Initiative work across several strategic work streams in this context, and the role of high quality, timely, and available data to this work. I will, as a part of this, also speak about the motivation and some of the experience with the Global Satellite Data Program that Norway's International Climate and Forest Initiative initiated 2 years ago to inform our joint effort to protect the world's remaining forests. Next. Forests are, as you know, critical for a range of ecosystem services that we rely on and perhaps often take for granted, from supporting our health, ensuring our safety, supporting our food security, our livelihoods, and providing important goods like climate regulation and biodiversity conservation. Next. And science is clear on that the goals of the Paris Agreement will not be achieved without halting deforestation and forest degradation. Protecting and restoring natural ecosystems like forests, peatlands, coastal wetlands, savannas, and grasslands to store and remove carbon is a key part of the climate solution that is addressed in Article 5 of the Paris Agreement that has not really gotten the attention it deserves. Protecting tropical forest is also, of course, critical to meeting the commitments under the Convention on Biological Diversity, as the majority of the rich terrestrial biodiversity exists in our forests. Indeed, the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals also depend on this. Life on the planet as we know it depends on urgently protecting the remaining tropical forests. Next. Norway's International Climate and Forest Initiative has since 2008 worked to combat deforestation and forest degradation in the tropics. This with the overall aim to contribute to a stable climate, to protecting biodiversity and sustainable development. And the initiative has an annual budget of around $300 million. The initiative emphasizes work in 7 areas to support tropical forest countries in protecting their forests. And we work with a range of partners among governments, business, indigenous peoples, and civil society, as they all have a key role. Next. The work on these 7 strategies all rely on timely, high-quality forest data. Let me start off with land use policies. Next. The Climate and Forest Initiative is well known for its large result-based bilateral partnerships that, with key forest countries where we disperse payments for reduced deforestation. These results are verified by satellite imagery. An important strategy to achieve reduced deforestation is to support countries in improving land use policies. Good land use management is dependent on good land use data. Therefore, a considerable part of NICFI's budget, around 1/4, goes towards supporting improved forest monitoring. When a government can monitor and track forest development, it can also assess the effects of its policies. Next. Indigenous peoples have a critical role in protecting forests. To do that, they need to have a voice in relevant processes at the international, national, and local level, and they need to have access to updated information on forests to manage and safeguard their territories. So supporting their role is therefore a strategic focus of our initiative. Next, moving on to financial support structures. While reducing forest loss is in the national interest of forest countries, international support can help them do more and do it faster. Carbon markets and international support structures are key to mobilize a large-scale climate finance for reduced deforestation. Scale can come from new regulated carbon markets, such as that one for international aviation, or it can come from voluntary carbon purchasing program from companies taking on science-based targets to climate neutrality. But for this to be efficient and an impactful mechanism to reduce forest loss, it needs to be done according to the highest environmental and social standards. And timely and high quality data are essential for this effort. To this end, Norwegian Climate and Forest Initiative has helped us support the launch of two important initiatives in 2019. The Architecture for Red Transactions, often referred to as ART, and Emergent, a forest finance facility that facilitate transactions in credit certified by ART between private carbon buyers and forest countries. Next. I'll come back to the forest strategy on transparency now and move on to speak about commodity markets. Next. Thanks. The global supply chains that produce and distribute commodities that drive deforestation are quite complex. But still, 2/3 of tropical deforestation occurs due to the production of just 4 commodities: cattle, soy, palm oil, and pulp and timber. Eliminating deforestation from commodity supply chains will require determined and consistent market signals from consumers, from supermarkets, and from commodity traders, combined with public land use policies that enable sufficient growth in production outside forests. We work with private sector initiatives like the Tropical Forest Alliance to help drive implementation of no deforestation commitments from companies. Next. Financial markets are, of course, an important part in this. In recent years, the climate risk have become an important factor for financial investors, financial institutions, and private investors, But today it is hard to invest your savings or pensions without contributing to deforestation. With the exception of important frontrunners, global finance has not taken sufficiently into account the environmental damage and the financial risks associated with deforestation. Even committed financiers have lacked access to credible and standardized data to be able to assess and address deforestation risks. We therefore support the development of standards, increased transparency and reporting, as well as work to make data available for monitoring compliance. We also support civil society strategies to hold financial actors accountable for deforestation. Next. The initiative also focuses on ending illegal forest destruction. At least 2/3 of tropical deforestation is illegal. Illegal logging and trade in tropical timber is one of the world's most lucrative criminal industries, and estimated at a value of $51 to $152 billion annually. The perpetrators, typically large transnational criminal networks, are involved in crimes such as corruption, money laundering, and tax evasion, as well as violations of the rights of indigenous and local communities. They undermine governance, rights, and entire economies. So getting accurate information in the hands of the right people to act on it is critical to urgently addressing this. The Norwegian Climate and Forest Initiative work on this by supporting monitoring and law enforcement, by promoting international collaboration between law enforcement agencies, by supporting civil society to provide transparency and accountability, as well as new technology to trace legality of forest products. Next. So as you understand, timely, high quality data available to all relevant actors that runs as a red thread across all these strategies and work streams. Is increased transparency regarding where deforestation and forest degradation is happening, why it is happening, who is responsible, and who finances it, is crucial for tropical forest government to address this and establish accountability. Next. Norway's Climate and Forest Initiative invests for this reason heavily in new technology and transparency solutions. By physical ones for knowing where forest destruction occurs. And examples of this include the open sourced high resolution satellite imagery, which I'll come back to very soon. Global Forest Watch as one platform to utilize such data. And FAO's CEPOL program that does good work in helping forest countries in making use of the satellite data and do the necessary analysis. We also focus on ownership, knowing who owns the land and the concessions. We work through various efforts with governments and civil society to promote transparency around forest concessions and determine the ultimate beneficial ownership of the concessions. We also focus on the commercial side, who buys from whom. An important example of such work is the work of an initiative called TRACE that use customs data to track supplier relationships and geographical sourcing, allowing purchasers and financiers to determine deforestation risk and act on it. We also focus, as mentioned, on transparency related to finance and knowing who finances who. Next. High resolution data can drastically improve forest monitoring, but they have historically been expensive and difficult to access. So this is the background for why the Norwegian Climate and Forest Initiative established a satellite data program. Our starting point was that satellite imagery should be a global public good. We therefore decided to grant free access to high resolution satellite images to the tropics to anyone, anywhere, to monitor tropical deforestation and monitor tropical forests generally. So through a tender process, we got a great team together, Kongsberg Satellite Services, Planet, and Airbus. And together they ensure regular distribution of updated satellite imagery and support users with all kinds of technical issues. Thank you. Next. So the program has now been in effect for almost 2 years. And on this slide, you can see some of the outreach in numbers. There are more than 14,000 registered users, and the number is still growing. In addition, the satellite imagery is available through the platform I mentioned called Global Forest Watch, Sentinel, FAO use it, Map by Mass, reaching many more users. Next. So we are starting also to get more and more feedback about the impacts of this program. Several government representatives have informed us that they use the satellite data and it has really helped them in their work to reduce deforestation and forest degradation. It has helped them to improve forest area change estimates, like for example, as a part of UNFCCC reporting. It has helped them to detect and validate and respond to change and wildfire alerts. For example, Colombia, that is an important partner for us, is using the high resolution satellite images on a daily basis to monitor forest and generate deforestation early warning alerts. In the Congo Basin, estimates of forest degradation is greatly improved. We have also received feedback from governments on that it has helped strengthen and train institutions to investigate and prosecute illegal deforestation activities. We have also heard that the data improved safety as officials know more what to expect when they go out in the field. Indigenous peoples are using the data to monitor their territories. Civil society increasingly also use the data to support legal claims, for example, on land rights, to detect abuse of licenses and detect encroachment in protected areas. Media also use it. An example is an article in New York Times that documented that hundreds of airstrips have been secretly built on protected lands in Brazil to fuel the illegal mining industry. Other feedback come from the private sector that are providing feedback on that the satellite data is driving new solutions in validating deforestation and for supporting supply chain engagement. Unilever is one of the companies that are using the NICFI satellite data program. And Unilever used the data to verify deforestation alerts in palm oil regions, enabling their team to engage suppliers and act early on deforestation risks. I believe that there's more potential for the private sectors to make use of the program. For example, in the context of the deforestation-free commodities regulations that we know are coming up and are in the pipeline in several countries now. We see that high-resolution data really empowers many actors on different levels to help them address deforestation and forest degradation. Given the recognition of the impact so far, we have decided to extend the satellite data program until September 2023, early this year. There's an option to extend it for 1 more year, and we are now starting a process to look at what we think should happen after this program has ended. Next. So to conclude, we see that attention to the importance of protecting forests and other ecosystems is growing as we're facing a climate and nature crisis. High quality and timely monitoring of nature, supporting more transparency is an important part of this development to ensure that we act on the latest knowledge. Our starting point was, as mentioned, that satellite imagery of tropical forests should be a global public good. I hope that our satellite data program can demonstrate that value. So now I really look forward to hearing the other speakers. I would be interested in hearing your views on how we can ensure access and use of high quality data to protect nature. As we know, this is a rapidly developing field. We also see capacity building to make good use of this data as an area where even more work is needed. And I would also welcome your views and experience, questions on how to access and use this data. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wow, thank you very much, Marte. Very appreciated. An excellent presentation, very direct and very, very succinct and very well said. I would like to acknowledge that the FAO Forestry Division and NICFI have long been collaborators, and it's been such a pleasure, at least from my part, or from my time here in FAO, been a pleasure to work with your institution and your organization, and thank you for the guidance and leadership you provide in this space, and also as a user of the satellite data, the NICFI Planet Satellite Data Program, I can tell you that it is just an incredibly valuable resource. I hope everybody's okay. Incredibly valuable resource to those of us in the field, and also to anybody who enjoys looking at also pretty pictures. I highly encourage you to make use of that data. It is an incredible resource both for analytics and I could make a joke. I will make a joke. Just screensavers and stuff, but it's excellent. It's an amazing thing. Conscious of the time, we will now take time for a moderated conversation about data, and not a geeky one, but hopefully a conversation that will inspire you about the good things that people are doing out there with the information available. As you maybe can guess from Marta's presentation, if you're a geospatial person, if you're into data, if you're into these sorts of things, it is your time in history. It is your time to shine. It's a golden age of data, as they say. We've never had so much information at our fingertips about the Earth's environment, about the Earth's surface. We can track back 50 years in time or more from the satellite image record. All of these data are freely available. Well, most of them are freely available, and then, of course, the contribution of the high-resolution satellite data from Norway is incredible. What I'm trying to say is that we know more, and we have more stuff coming at us to process and to learn than we ever have had before, which is a good problem to have, if you ask me. Our challenge, though, still is to leverage this massive amount of information for, as several speakers have already alluded to, making those better decisions to do good things with the amount of information coming. So with that in mind, I'd first like to introduce our panel, and this is a bit strange for me because all of our panel are remotely joining today. I looked up the word illustrious because I'm trying to figure out how to describe our panel, and that's just well-known, respected, and admired for past achievements. So I can't really call them the illustrious panel members, because while they do have past achievements, we're also talking about present achievements and future achievements, and I'm sure they will all three contribute to those in a great, great way. So we have with us today, and I'm not sure how this is going to work, we have with us Ms. Tara O'Shea. Tara is the Senior Director of Forests and Land Use at Planet, which is a private satellite company and one that furnished the data as part of the NICFI Planet initiative. We have also with us Mr. Frank Martin Seifert. Frank Martin is the focal point for land and forest services of the European Space Agency. And we have also Mr. Dan Irwin. Dan is the Global Program Manager of the NASA Surveyor Program, and he is based at the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in the United States. So thank you all for being here wherever you are. And I should say that Tara and Dan are joining us from the United States this morning, where it is various stages of very early in the morning. So I hope that you at least have had your coffee, and well, Frank Martin, I hope you've had your coffee as well. And we'll start with some questions. I am moderating this. Do we get to see them, or do I just ask questions and the voices appear? I hope we get to see them. Or else you're looking at me. There you are. Oh, thank goodness. Good.
Eric, we don't leave you alone.
I see you in my dreams like that. Anyway, it's great that you are here. I should point out that all three of you are very good colleagues of ours, and we have enjoyed lots of time working together. So it's a pleasure to have you with us today. So I'm going to ask a series of questions. These are all meant to be, now we're all there, meant to be inspiring. The first, I will start with a question to all the panelists, and that is, where do you see remotely sensed data making the greatest impact in the near future, especially to forests and forest-related people? And in the far future, if you can envision it, and are there particular use cases you'd like to highlight? So, Tara, we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Eric. That was a really helpful introduction to the panel. This is a great group, and we are all lucky enough to work together in a day-to-day, so I'm excited for the conversation. So where I see remotely sensed data making the most impact, I think many of us work in this space because we really believe you can't manage what you can't measure. And I think the potential for remotely sensed data is to help us make this sort of environmental accounting relevant to even more stakeholders for whom maybe it hasn't previously been relevant before. And Eric, you said this a little bit in the introduction, but suddenly we have more information than ever before about our Earth, about forests and carbon and land use dynamics in particular. And I think that's really promising, because for decades, I truly believe we have had the leadership of governments in forests and climate related challenges. We have the UNFCCC process, we've had these kind of measurement, reporting, verification methodologies broken out, but we really need to drive those same operations in the private sector as well, if they too are going to understand, manage, and allocate capital away from unsustainable land use risks. And that to me is the potential for some of these new innovations in remote sensing and cloud computing and ultimately geospatial analysis. And I think, we are seeing it. So Marta touched on some of the private sector engagement that we are starting to see in the NICFI satellite data program, which again is the high resolution data program in partnership with Planet, KSAT, and Airbus. And it's been really exciting to hear some of the feedback from some of those private sector users who are using the data alongside other data sets like radar, but say, with the availability of high resolution optical, suddenly I have undeniable evidence that helps me speak the same language as a supplier. And I think, we're just gonna see kind of the inclusion of more and more stakeholders as we bring more and more of these remote sensing based technologies and approaches online.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Frank Martin, would you like to answer that
Well,
question as well?
I can subscribe what Tara just said before, and but I would like to put some emphasis as well that this move to the free and open data policy, which was most evident by when the US was opening the Landsat archive in 2008, and we within Europe. We were following, the EU was following with its Copernicus program, making all the data and many of the products free and openly available, not only for their citizens, but for the citizens of the world. That made a big step forward in data democracy, in transparency, and as well in the use of the data to support international policy. We are currently, Eric, as you said, in a golden age of remote sensing, not only related to the governmental satellites, but as well towards those coming from the private sector, which are nicely bringing their different capabilities together to make a better understanding of what is happening, what's the status of our forest, enabling the people who are living in the forest to know what's happening in their environment, not only for the couple of 100 meters around, but for the whole country and actually for the whole globe. Initiatives like the one which was mentioned for NICFI is really essential to make even the very high resolution data easily accessible and getting a higher information level to the other data streams. Overall, the long-term availability of all these data streams, and Copernicus, for instance, is a program which is foreseen for decades, makes it as well a very attractive tool to be used in international policies. So Earth observation data as an infrastructure for everybody to understand the ecosystems and specifically their forests, what we are talking today about.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Frank Martin. Dan, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you and greetings from the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. And as Eric, you alluded, and Frank and Tara as well, I mean, we are in this golden age of remote sensing. I remember 30 years ago processing and acquiring one Landsat scene, which cost several hundred to several $1,000s, and even just the compute power to be able to process that would take oftentimes overnight just to run one simple process. Now we have, as was alluded to, the NICFI data, which is an absolute game changer, dynamic world. We have new data sets coming out like the harmonized Landsat Sentinel data, HLS, or even into the future, this continued integration of multiple sensors to really help with environmental change and with higher accuracy and multiple observations per day. When it comes to use cases, and I think Marta really hit on a bunch of them. I mean, you could take even, with the NICFI data, the ability for a group like the Coalition for Rainforest Nations to use a tool like Collect Earth Online, which you'll hear about more later, for countries to now collect data on land use and land use change over time and to make their reporting requirements and deforestation data and carbon stocks easier and more accurate. So it's countries and groups are now taking these tools, and because they have these unbelievable data sets in it, they're really customizing them for their specific use cases. And even new initiatives like the Forest Data Partnership, which aims to reduce commodity-driven deforestation and restore forest landscapes, has massive potential for impact, given the initiative's strong collaboration with the private sector and the ability to access these new data sets that everybody's talking about.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan. Thank you all three. See, I said it was going to be inspiring, and it is inspiring. Question number 2, this is just to Frank Martin. Frank Martin, what barriers do you see barriers that exist still to the use and application of these amazing data sets? And how do you think it affects the potential impacts that these data sets could have? In other words, are we getting as much as we can get out of them, do you think?
Well, we still see, let's say, a step to understand the data that you need for the in the past you needed a lot of understanding of the data before you could in the handling before you can use it. Today we see initiatives like from CEOs to providing analysis-ready data to look for harmonized data and then putting data on platforms where this huge amount of data doesn't have to, you don't have to download it towards on your IT device, on your computer, but you can handle with a couple of commands those huge amount of data in up there in the cloud and get only the information what you need down to your into your computer. Platforms like FAO's development, CPAL, or other activities like Forestry Tab from Mount Isa, like the DIAS platforms within the Copernicus program, they are helping to go over this to overcome this barrier on one hand the digital divide, because we still see in a lot of countries a lack of the access towards the overall global IT infrastructure, and as well it is easing the handling of this amount of data. It's still it is still, this barrier is still there, but we are seeing more and more activities which are bridging these gaps and providing a solution that really everybody can access this richness of information.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Frank Martin. I completely agree with that. Next question is for Tara. Tara, as a member of a private company, can you provide, please, examples of how the provision of private data can enhance the provision of public data, or how private and public data can enhance the functionality or the value to each other?
Yeah, definitely. And of course, I am a bit biased, as you said, being in the private sector. But, I really believe there is a lot of innovation happening in the private sector that can enhance some of these public data sets and approaches as well. And it's not just in the data provision, it's also in some of those barriers that Frank just helped us better understand, right, when it comes to cloud computing and storage and analysis. And there's a lot of innovation happening across that whole value chain, I think. But in terms of, data provision, there's a lot of innovation happening, I think, that can complement the spatial, temporal, and spectral characteristics of what has traditionally been available. And this gets back to kind of that golden age of remote sensing. At Planet, I think many folks are familiar with our Dove satellites, which really we tried to optimize for spatial and temporal resolutions to complement what folks were already used to using. We recently announced our upcoming Tanager mission, which will be our first hyperspectral mission, so adding to that spectral capability as well. And I think I can speak on behalf of Planet, but I really think I speak on behalf of many actors in the private sector. And we are keen to explore and deliver on public-private partnerships because, we know from our own IPCC reports, we really only have 7 or 8 years to kind of turn the ship around on some of these issues. And through some of the, I like how Marta called these global public goods, through some of these programs, we've had a chance to see users use these data sets interoperably and see the outcomes that you get when you have that more kind of holistic view, whether that's, work we've done with the Copernicus program or work that we do with NASA that provides Planet's high spatial and temporal resolution data sets into their sciences community here in the US, or of course the NICFI satellite data program, where a number of the users in that program, including some of the local and indigenous communities that Marta mentioned, they're using these data sets in parallel and interoperably with things like the radar band of Sentinel-1, with GLAD alerts. And it's pretty amazing how much more actionable things become on the ground with the use of all of these data sets. So we are really keen to accelerate and support those sorts of public goods programs and public-private partnerships wherever we can, because we think it leads to fast and more comprehensive results.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tara. I also agree with that, right? Like all hands on deck, everybody pulling in the same direction. And the last question here is for Dan. Dan, how do you see the connection between data availability and policy making? And can you provide examples of what we've been speaking about, perhaps how better data has in fact led to better decisions?
Sure, thank you. First of all, I want to answer that from, I think, two perspectives. One is, really from a gender lens and gender considerations. And one of the things in Servier that we're really trying to focus more on with NASA, USAID, and our partners around the world is really this concept of, through our gender strategy, of supporting women leaders and gender champions, empowering women and girls to explore STEM fields, integrating gender considerations in the planning of the services that we developed. Because women oftentimes we find in the places we work use and receive information differently than men, and using remote sensing and GIS to address issues impacting groups characterized by gender, ethnicity, age, and social status. So I really think that that's such an important consideration. More specifically, to your question, one of my favorite examples, and actually, when I got into the field back in 1988, there was a satellite image. It was a Landsat image at the time, where you could actually see the political boundary from space between Mexico and Guatemala. And the reason you could see it, because Mexico had completely deforested their side of the border and Guatemala still had its forests intact. And President Vinicio Cerezo of Guatemala saw this image. It was actually published in National Geographic. And that was the key rationale and the key tool that he used to develop the Maya Biosphere Reserve, which at the time was Central America's largest protected area. And now fast forward to today, you have, and because of all the data sets that are available, you have park managers in Guatemala routinely using data sets like firms and other data sets to look at instances of deforestation and fires, or as Marta talked about, using the planet data to look at illegal mining in the Amazon. And we've got a tool called RAMI that the government of Peru is using. And the fact that we now have communities around the world where we actually had the colleagues in our Amazonia hub partner with colleagues in our West Africa hub to build a similar service and a similar system in Ghana for illegal mining in West Africa. We see examples where the government of Nepal has created a national land cover monitoring system, which generates spatially seamless and temporally consistent annual land cover maps for the entire country. And that's being used for national and international reporting on forest cover change, for preparing long-term strategies for achieving Nepal's nationally determined contribution targets, and as a foundational data set for evidence-based planning and policy development. So there's many, many examples. That's just a few of them.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you for those examples. It's incredible. Like B.B. King used to say, like, if you can't play the blues with one note, then you can't play the blues. And it reminds me that even with all these thousands and thousands of images that we're dealing with now on a daily basis, it still might just come down to that one that makes the difference. So thank you for that. We're a little over time. Sorry, Frank.
If you allow me 30 seconds, well, the personal experience, 15 years ago, I went to my first COP, and being there at the ESA stand, people were asking why a space agency is going to COP and being there. I explained that we are enabling climate science, and of course that you can only regulate what you can measure. But the perspective of the policy sector was that EO and the satellites, this is a toy which is occasionally showing nice things, but it's not a reliable tool. Today, what we see that has completely changed, and systematic observations by satellites are a fixed part within the Paris Agreement, and the climate science, climate regulations are are really relying on the input provided by Earth observation.
Thank you very much, Frank Martin, and you're absolutely right. And I think that just goes to show, if nothing else, that you should always have a satellite remote sensing specialist nearby at all times. So I had one final question, and I will ask it because is there a magic data set that we don't have that we should have? And you each have 1 second to answer that question. You can just blurt it out all at the same time if you want. Or you can say no.
NISAR L-band SAR coming soon.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Tara. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I'm going to take more than 1 second, though. I will just say, like, I don't want to presume that I could know what that product is, but I like the way Marta framed comprehensive access, because one thing that's been really incredible to see is when you get these sorts of data sets into the hands of those who have local or subject matter expertise, it's incredible what they pull out that you wouldn't even know to look for the signature of. And so I think the more that we have, you know, global stakeholders collaborating on these data sets, the more that we're going to be able to figure out what those magic data products are.
Yeah, Tara, the magic comes, I agree completely, the magic comes with the people using the data sets. They make the data sets magic. And the upcoming data sets as the NISA, the biomass mission, and so on, they enhance the available data, but the people using it to understand forests, they make the magic.
Wow. Excellent. I'm glad we took time to answer that question. You all three, thank you so very much for your time. Tara and Dan, thank you so much for waking up so early in the morning to talk to us. And Frank Martin, thank you so much for spending your afternoon a little bit with us. And yeah, very inspiring and wonderful presentations and conversation. So thank you all very much.
Thanks a lot, Eric.
Thank you all. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I realize I'm eating into the Q&A time, but I think that's okay for the kind of presentations and conversations we're having. The next stage of this afternoon are going to be what we put on the program as open forest demonstrations. They were originally listed as hands-on demonstrations. They have now been changed to hands-off presentations, simply for lack of time to do that properly. So we will have a series of presentations demonstrating how FAO and our collaborators are working hard to make the best use of data and technology to do exactly what we were just talking about, which is impact actions on the ground and generally improve the human condition. I will introduce all the speakers now, and since we have these lovely chairs up here that have not been made any use of to this point, if you wouldn't mind as I introduce you, please come up and take a seat. How you arrange yourselves is up to you. First off, we'll have Ms. Yelena Feingold. She is a forestry officer at FAO and a member of the CEPL team itself. So thank you, Yelena. We also have Mr. David Sa. David is a professor at the University of San Francisco. And we also have Mr. Hai. Hai is an officer with the Forest Inventory and Planning Institute of Vietnam. And then online joining us, we have Dr. Peter Newton, who is associate professor he's an associate professor at the University of Colorado in Boulder in the United States. So, without further ado, I think we're in the order of the presentations. We'll have a presentation on CEPL, we'll have a presentation on Collect Earth Online, we'll have a practical example of how those tools are being used in a country, and then we will also talk about how some of those new data and new science are being used to define and help further elicit the issues around forests and tree proximate people. So thank you very much, and the floor is yours, Yelena.
Thank you so much, Eric, and what an inspiring conversation that was, and also presentations that we've had so far. It's really great to speak to all of you today and show you a bit about CEPL, a web platform that you've already heard a little bit about, and how our users are using SEEPL to transform some of the satellite data that we heard about into the data for better decision making. And SEEPL provides countries, communities, and individuals access to powerful cloud computing and decades of satellite imagery very easily. So let's start out by taking a look inside of the SEEPL platform. SEEPL is free and open source, and anyone, anywhere can sign up for the platform and in just a few clicks, visualize satellite imagery over their country or anywhere in the world, and do analysis on that geospatial data that's relevant to their context and needs. And here on the screen, we see some of that satellite imagery, and then I'll be showing some of how that satellite imagery is used in the following slides. So opening up the hood a bit of SEEPL, it's powered by, first of all, some of the amazing presenters that we had in the conversation from the European Space Agency, NASA, the NICFI planet data, and that invaluable public data really enables that, that access, that free and open access to those data sources. And all of that satellite imagery requires a massive amount of computing power. And this has been really revolutionized by Google with the development of Google Earth Engine. And SEEPL really leverages the processing capabilities of Google Earth Engine. And so to access SEEPL, users don't need any particular hardware or software, just access to a mobile device or a computer, and they are able to access this plethora of satellite imagery and algorithms and create data for their needs. And the objective of SEEPL is really democratizing data and algorithms and enables sophisticated, relevant analyses by anyone, anywhere. And SEEPL integrates the latest science into algorithms and applications that are made available in the platform. And these images here show research on dense time series analysis, processing hundreds of gigabytes and even terabytes of satellite data, and how we've transformed that code into then very easy to use tools. And then those tools are tested by our users and experts in the field, and then provide feedback to make those tools more usable, more user-friendly, and relevant in their context. And the power of the cloud allows for extremely fast processing. And what previously might have taken months or might have even been impossible to do, now we can do those, process that data in a matter of minutes or even seconds. And that allows, one, for larger scale implementation, and two, it allows SEEPL users to what we say fail faster. So they don't have to worry about getting it right the first time because the data is going to take 1 month or months to run, but they can experiment and choose the right data, the algorithms or combination of different data and algorithms that meet their needs. I would also like to mention here what SEEPL does not do. SEEPL does not provide pre-computed statistics or maps. And it's the people, and as Tara and Frank Martin and our other presenters said, it's really the people that provide that magic, that provide the context and make that data relevant and important, and then make the important decisions. And so it's the users that create the data, that own the data, and decide what to do with it. And there are many available global maps that provide information on forest and deforestation, but they often don't reflect the local circumstances or national definitions. So what we've done in CEPL is we made those powerful algorithms available and the data behind those global maps available, so users can create their own customized and locally relevant data sets. And here in this example on the screen in Republic of Congo, local technicians with local expertise have used CEPL to transform data into maps on forest changes and to more accurately depict forest dynamics for national forest monitoring and REDD+ reporting to the UNFCCC. And applications in CEPL are co-developed with countries and are constantly evolving to meet monitoring needs. In Indonesia, there have been huge investments in restoring their precious peatlands. And to track this restoration progress, we've worked with government agencies to develop a tool to map soil moisture over time and compare that to data from the field. Here we have another example of fires, which can be quite a hot topic. And in CEPL, we've combined fire alert systems with the NICFI Planet daily high-resolution imagery, and we can visualize active fires like we see here on the screen from just 24 hours ago, and overlaid with satellite imagery from that same day. And we can also look back and see historical fires, and we can also map the burn severity and land use changes attributed to those fires in any place in the world. And the CEPL team is collaborating with the Geo-Indigenous Alliance and to put data into the hands of indigenous communities. And the team has co-created a workflow and application for identifying areas suitable for hurricane shelters in indigenous communities in Nicaragua impacted by 2 consecutive hurricanes a few years ago. And CEPL was used to easily process Sentinel-1 radar imagery to identify areas that were flooded during and after the hurricanes, and those areas are marked as unsuitable for hurricane shelters, and this is put on a website that then also uses crowdsourcing to combine that information with local knowledge to identify areas where suitable shelters and actual buildings are located where people can take shelter and be safe. And another very interesting and important application of CEPL is for land degradation monitoring and reporting, which is relevant for the Sustainable Development Goal 15. And in this example, in Cox's Bazar refugee camp in Bangladesh, degraded forests have been identified in CEPL and then subsequently restored and then sustainably managed to provide fuel wood for these very vulnerable communities. And in reversing degradation, we can prioritize where to focus restoration efforts. And in support of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, we've developed a tool called C-Plan, very similar to CEPL, sometimes confusing. But that tool is based on restoration priorities using relevant socioeconomic and biophysical data, where users can generate customizable suitability maps of cost-effective sites for forest restoration, which can really help can inform where to restore. And I'm really excited for some of the next presentations. We actually have Hai here, who has been a core part of the development team of C-Plan, and he'll present how he's using this tool in Vietnam. And this final example shows how Ethiopia is using CEPAL as an integral part of their national forest monitoring system, using the image classification application to identify changes from forest to cropland. And these points were identified by forest experts, and then in CEPAL, that information was then modeled over space to create maps of those changes. And I'd like to finish off this presentation with this amazing slide that was presented a couple weeks ago at COFO by the director of the Ethiopian Forest Resource Assessment and Monitoring Directorate. And I think this image really speaks for itself. And we can see really how CEPAL, Collect Earth Online, which will be the next presentation, and Google Earth Engine has really transformed the way that they've worked. And it's relieved a lot of the burden of processing imagery, and they can focus on creating reliable, transparent, and better data for forest monitoring and decision making. There we go. So I'd like to thank you for your time and invite you to try the platform for yourself. The address is cepal.io. So sign up, give it a try, make some nice screensavers or maps of forest. Thank you. Back to you, Eric.
Let's trade. Am I up, Eric? You're up. I love that CEPAL stuff. I think it's amazing. I'm David Saw. I'm a professor at the University of San Francisco while we're waiting for the slides to pop up. I'm also a principal in an environmental think tank called SIG. It's one of the implementing partners of SEVERE, which is a joint USA-NASA funded program, which is how we all got introduced to you folks, and the Collect Earth Online initiative that we all got built together. When you look, click, come on. There we go. So when you look at the rate of deforestation and the rate of land use change, we've heard this numerous times. It's scary, it's terrifying. The pace of it, the scale of it is something that can only really be seen using Earth observations. And you've heard today numerous folks talk about the fact that, hey, we need to capture more of this EO, finer resolutions at a faster pace. That's a lot of information, that's a lot of data, but all that data needs to be interpreted somehow. It needs those people on the ground. It needs somebody to say what that thing actually is for any of these amazing models to work, for any of those great tools that we have in CEPAL to work, the C-Plan to work, any of that stuff. We need field-based information. And how do we collect that field-based information in a way that's open, transparent, democratized? It's hard. It's hard to access that. And it's hard to access that for those folks, those individuals whose expertise, those local knowledge that we need. We need that information in order to make sense of any of this stuff, right? And because of that, our solution was to try to develop Collect Earth Online. We developed Collect Earth Online in combination with a whole wide variety of folks. And the idea behind it was to be consistent with the whole open source, open science, open information, accessible, right? Coming up with those theories, those ideas, that format of trying to build out applications is hard. And by getting this group of folks together, which includes, FAO, USAID, NASA, Civil Carbon, SEVERE program, US Forest Service spent a lot of time here, Google, Boston University, and a whole bunch of other folks, we were able to get a platform pulled together, and we were able to get it pulled together using some principles, right? One thing is that it had to be free and accessible to all. And accessible means that it had to be able to be useful in places that typically didn't have the best computers or didn't have the best sort of bandwidth. It needed to be implemented in an environment where you're able to use it with whatever you actually have. It needs to be able to have multiple users use it at the same time. It's hard to have one person be responsible for the entire Amazon. Doesn't make sense. It's also useful to get multiple narratives multiple voices in that collection as well. So ensuring that multiple user input was key and critical to the success. It had to have access to multiple sources of satellite imagery to interpret from. The NICFI Planet data, amazing data set. We're very, very fortunate to be able to have it integrated into this platform, but have it flexible enough to be able to integrate the next generation of stuff, right? Whatever that is. Dan's fancy SAR satellite band that he wants to get put into this thing. It needs to be able to integrate with standard estimation tools. The stuff that we have in SEPL, the stuff that's in Google Earth Engine, it needs to be able to be cross-platform dependent. It needs to sit with standards that are consistent with land cover mapping platforms. It needs to have the ability of being interoperable, right? It needs to be able to be used by multiple folks. There needs to be an ability to have quality control over it. So not only do you get your own voice in terms of identifying what you see on the ground, but you also should have the ability to say, how good is it? How accurate is it? How timely is it? And it needs to be used in real life programs that have real life transactions that change people's lives. You know, if you look at the NICFI, one of the pillars was, hey, there's red transactions. This thing needs to be able to be consistent with the recording needed to have these RED Plus projects be able to move forward. And there's a whole bunch of other criteria that we actually defined, right? And so when you look at it, we got it pulled together, and that interoperability part was critical. Like, we needed one place where you could do not only the design and collection of that information, but also the recording of that information. And we set it up in a way where it just walks a user through it. And it walks a user through it depending on what their institution is. And so the first thing that happens when you actually get into this environment, you build your institution. You define who you are, right? If you are a forest ministry, you've been using this thing. You get to define, this is our organization, this is the criteria, this is the restrictions, these are the privacy levels that we want. If you're an indigenous community in a local area and you wanted to identify and protect your local information, you could do that as well. And there's all kinds of different levels. So you're giving really people on the ground the ability to define what their specific organization is. You need to be able to pick imagery solutions. There's the free open stuff. There's the stuff that's made available, but you might have your own acquisition of information. You might be very good at flying drones in a specific protected area that you want to be able to interpret from. We need the ability of being able to integrate that information in an open, transparent fashion. I'm not going to go through the other 4 slides, but you get the idea. You need the ability to, define your plots. You need the ability to define your samples. You need the ability to ask the questions you want to ask when you're actually interpreting the stuff on the ground in a way that you want to ask it with a set of rules that are important, right? And when you look at that, you need to be able to do it in this collaborative fashion, right? You need to be able to see what other folks are doing on that same sort of landscape. In this example here, this is one of the projects that was done in the Severe Mekong Hub. There's 3 folks who were going after this specific collection. This one was specifically targeted looking at a near real-time deforestation alert system in Cambodia. One of the examples I think Dan talked about. If you look at it, you can see who is actually efficient, It's Ate. If you know Ate, he's a very good interpreter. He likes to interpret a plot in less than a minute. Very, very European, right? Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have Nguyen. She's Vietnamese. Very thoughtful. 6 minutes to interpret a plot, right? And the idea is that we have the ability to be able to benchmark and see how one does against the other. Probably need to throttle down the number of plots Ate is interpreting, and maybe throttle up the number of plots Nguyen needs to interpret, and maybe do a cross-check between the two. But it allows people to see and work together in pretty unique ways. Interfaces are really important. There's a new interface that's going to be released soon, but the idea is to make it really intuitive to use. Capacity building is really important in these sorts of environments, but if you need to spend a week trying to train somebody how to use this as an interpreter, maybe you need to change the interface a little bit. And the idea here is to try to make it as simple as possible to deal with the complexities of the questions that you're actually asking. And so there's a whole variety of components there. It has the ability of engaging and interlocking with a variety of other technologies. We heard that Google Earth Engine, for example, is a key backbone for a lot of the stuff that we do nowadays. and being able to pull that information in to augment the data that you're actually looking at is important. Hey, if I'm going to look at a high-resolution image for a place that's deforested, I want to know what the history is of that specific location. Is there a way where I could build a widget and look at the time series for that plot? And can I do that in a way that's super easy to do? So what we've done is that we've been able to integrate those features in the Geo dashboard within the Collector Earth Online environment, where you could build those widgets any way you like, right? And sometimes there's some standardized widgets that are important as well. Degradation. How many guys have heard of degradation before? Everyone in this building should be raising their hands. That's something that's pretty consistent. That's a pretty consistent request that comes up over and over and over again, where you're trying to find, hey, when did that deforestation occur? When did that degradation occur? What was the exact time period? How do I integrate that high-resolution imagery with high temporal data to find an exact date or a relatively approximate date? So there's all these sorts of techniques and methods that are extendable, and when one group builds one in this environment, other groups can grab these same sorts of widgets and add them to their data collection experience. Quality control is really, really important. It's critical to this. And each different collection has their own approach to doing quality control. And so what we've done in the system is that we've given folks a variety of different options for being able to create their own QA/QC methodology. Whether there's a, hey, let's put a disagreement threshold. If you and I keep disagreeing with each other, maybe we need to have Eric kind of arbitrate between us. Or if you want to have a certain number of plots that get reassessed a certain number of times, you could stick that into the system as well. Sometimes a user says, I don't know what this is. And they have the ability to say, flag it. I don't know what this is, flag it. And that allows the person who's actually managing the program to go back in and grab all those flagged plots, and maybe there's a different way to look at that bit of information or change the way the questions are actually being addressed to actually set things up better. And I'm getting the one finger thing. So if you look at who's actually using this thing, there's a bunch of folks using it, right? And thanks to the big, huge network that's here at FAO, you got 2,400 organizations, 3,300 users, 25,000 projects that are actually out there right now. 17 million samples are collected. Just put that in your brain for a while. If there's an ability to allow people to share that field-based information, which is massive, to match with that flood of Earth observations that we're actually getting, and we're able to do it in a way that's transparent and that allows people to get recognition for what they're doing, it's a paradigm shifter. We're going to be able to do a lot more with a lot less resources, right? There's a bunch of help on the systems itself. I really encourage you guys to go to collect.earth. A whole bunch of use cases, a whole bunch of different requirements, and there's always new requirements coming on board. And with that said, did I end on time? Yay! Good. We're always open to questions and suggestions and comments and feedback and that sort of thing. So thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pham Ngọc Hải. I'm officer at Forest Inventory and Planning Institute in Vietnam. Today, I would like to share our experience with the FAO SIP plan tool that we worked on the few months ago about how the SIP plan work, the tool work in the Vietnam, and how to engagement with end user for using this innovative tool in the country. Yes. Okay. My presentation is focused on how the application SIP plan tool for forest restoration planning in Vietnam. And we would like to have some lesson learned about when we have pilot with SIP plan tool with specific country like in Vietnam. You know, Vietnam is one of country with strong commitment with climate change debate and also the red blood initiatives. Right now we have also a lot of forest restoration program from 1990 up to now. And also Vietnam have some had participated with some red blood project initiative like the World Bank FCPF in North Central Coast, Vietnam, and we are working with LEAP, proposal of LEAP, Amazon for the South Central Coast and Central Highland Vietnam for project on reduce forest deforestation and forest degradation, and also the forest restoration. And for forest restoration is once red activity intervention in Vietnam, and we would like to encourage this because in some area in Vietnam has experience with deforestation. Right now they need to reforestation based on a lot of deforestation during the open area, open barriers. Yes, what's benefits of restoration? The first one, we need to restoration information for forest state management. Thus, we will have the information about the potential restoration area, land cover chain, and hotspot area and main driver of forest chain to make the decision and significant for restoration planning. And another beneficiary is public and private and local community. I will show you this later about how the engagement with the community for forest planning, and also for like the implementation. You can see like the PP. We are working on the forest planning and forest inventory to make the information for decision making in forest restoration. Yet, why we choose this area, this green area is the Central Highland. This experience with a lot of deforestation during 20 years, and we choose this area which has experience. You know this color, the red color is a deforestation area, and this one of hotspot for deforestation. That's why we choose this area for the test pilot with the test with forest restoration for planning. Yeah, and when we work with SIP plan tool, we work with a lot of parameters which constrain about the natural condition, also some restoration indicator with some cost indicator, and we will work and we will play with different scenario with use different information to play that. And after that, we will work with evaluation. And in our approach, we not only using the result, we also have another result to check, to cross-check, and we also using the high resolution planet to make sure that this potential for reforestation or not. And also we have using some sample biodiversity estimation tool like the collected online to visual interpretation and to make estimation how potential, how the restoration potential work or not. And we have also the field work with the two main objective. Is the first one is a meeting with local stakeholder. Here we work with provincial forest ranger, and we also have meeting with forest owner, the big forest owner like the forest enterprise and forest protection unit. And we also have the field work for validation with primary result in the Central Highland of Vietnam. And here we have the meeting to introducing about the SIP plan tool, and also the primary result in the province. And we also exchange information about introduce them to how SIP plan work and how SIP plan can help us for make the forest restoration planning in as the province scale. And also we have collected some forest restoration document, also the forest restoration priority. That's very important for the selecting validation in the SIP plan tool. Here, after that, we have also conduct the field validation and to see how the SIP plan work in the field. And mainly we focus on the nature forest area and also the protected area. And we found that the SIP plan tool results quite good in the field. We have a lot of information correlate with potential of forest restoration information. Here is some agreement with from the green color is from the sea plant, and this is some point we already have the field work. Here we have some challenging with working with forest restoration planning. The first one is the main deforestation driver in this area is converted from the forest to agricultural land, and almost is a forest entrustment. And forest restoration potential area is quite small and development. That's very complicated when we make the planning at the province scale or national scale also. And we have almost the people prefer the agroforestry model than the forest restoration. Because for economy development, they prefer to use agroforestry than the forest restoration. And the costly for when comparison with the forest restoration and agricultural planted. That's why. And when we work with this tool, we have some the lesson learned. The first one about the we need from the nation, from global scale, we need to harmonize with the country specific, and that's why we need to cooperate with some the country specific data in the CIPO and CIPLAN tool, and for restoration priority also. Because that's very, very difficult in the some area. Maybe in this area they focus on the, for example, barren, but some areas they only focus on subland and shrubland or agricultural land. And we have the tool with the consistency in CIPLAN with both spatial and temporal. That's very important for us to when we make the restoration planning. And for country specific data, we have also not only from the, for example, land cover, we also have the forest owner information. That's very important when we make the forest planning in the private sector land or the state land. And we can cooperate with the primary data from result from CIPLAN and with our data to make the more the efficiency data information for decision maker. And when we work with FPD, Forest Ranger Department, the cost parameter is one key important for country when consider when making forest restoration. Because some country like Vietnam, we have a limitation for financing with forest restoration and cost benefit cost data is one key important for us when we consider with the forest restoration planning. And and I would like to thank to FAO for FAO Forestry Division and also Simba Carbon to support us, not only the capacity building also, but also a lot of technical support for us to try with pilot the tool. And I'm here, but I'm remote sensing, and I'm fan of SIPO. So, and I know the SIPO long time ago, maybe 2016. And right now we are work a lot with SIPO tool, not only SIPLAN, but also another tool for the, for example, the annual composite image data for the whole country. And we also do using the sample bay area estimation tool in the SIPO for our sample bay area estimation for activity data reporting for red blood and MRV reporting also. And finally, I would like to thank for the listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hai. We'll go right now to Dr. Peter Newton, who is online joining us. So I thought I'd step in and introduce. And you guys can choose. I've realized I put you up here in front of the slides, but
Oh, we can see right there.
you can see well.
Oh, do you want us to leave?
No, no.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Are my slides on the screen there?
We can hear you very well, and I think your slides are on their way. There they are. Okay, everything's good.
Awesome. Great, thank you. Sorry not to be there, to be able to be there in person, but good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be with you virtually and to present this work on estimating the number of forest and tree proximate people. So we present here both a new methodology for doing so and also new up-to-date estimates. I'd like to begin by acknowledging and thanking my co-authors on this work, particularly my co-lead author, Sarah Castle, and the FAO team, the FAO team of Leticia, Monica, Javier, and Thais. So we're publishing this work in the form of an FAO working paper, which is a background paper to the State of the World's Forests 2022 report, which was released earlier this year. This background paper is actually being launched today and is available now online. The report itself contains details of the methodology and the results and is available to download at the link on the screen here at the top. And in addition, the data and the methods are available on the FAO hand-in-hand geospatial platform, as is the code necessary to reproduce the analysis in Google Earth Engine. So we invite you to download the report, and we welcome you to use and to share your feedback on the data and the methods. So the primary objective of this work was to take a first step towards developing a methodology for indicator number 13 for the global collaborative partnership on forests global core set of forest-related indicators. Indicator 13 being the number of forest-dependent people in extreme poverty. So we use forest proximity as a proxy for forest dependence, and in his background paper, we generate an up-to-date estimate, an update to previous estimates of forest-dependent people that were published in 2020, but which used data from 2012. A guiding principle for this work was to develop a methodology that only used free, global, publicly available data that were also updated annually. So in doing so, we could be sure that our estimates could be replicated by other people and could be updated annually to enable tracking over time and could be generated for any country. A final objective of this work was to additionally generate the first global estimates of the number of tree proximate people defined as people living near to trees outside of forests on agricultural land. So this work builds on two pieces of previous research that we conducted. First of all, in 2016, we sought to understand the range of definitions of forest-dependent people, and among many dimensions and interpretations of forest dependency, forest proximity emerged as often, although not always, being a necessary but insufficient condition for dependency. And unlike many measures of forest dependence, forest proximity is also operationalizable at a global scale. And second, therefore, in 2020, we estimated the number of forest proximate people in the world. But as I say, those estimates use data from 2012, and not all data were publicly available. So just briefly, why might it be important to quantify and to estimate the number of forest and tree proximate people? Well, first, to enable monitoring and evaluation. So in addition to responding to indicators like the GCS indicator, many agencies are interested in understanding the impacts of their programs and policies on the livelihoods of people living in forested regions. And a standardized approach to estimating the number of people living in a particular area or region can enable consistent evaluation of the number of people who would be affected or who have been affected by any given intervention. Second, such estimates could assist decision makers in prioritizing interventions in places where their investments might have the greatest impact. And third, these estimates can help identify the number of people at risk, for example, from wildfire, floods, or deforestation in any given place. So to do this work, to estimate the number of forest proximate people, we overlaid data on forest cover with data on population density. So for forests, we use data from the Copernicus Global Land Cover Dataset, which is available from 2015 annually with tree cover data at 100-meter resolution. In choosing that dataset, we reviewed a dozen different tree cover datasets and selected this as the most appropriate. And my colleague Sarah Castle is currently leading a paper that actually compares explicitly the pros and cons of these different alternatives. And we created buffer distances around forests to estimate the number of people that lived within 1 kilometer and 5 kilometer of a forest. For population, we used world pop data, which is also global gridded data with 100-meter resolution. We excluded urban areas, following precedent from the literature, so that we're only measuring the number of rural people living in and around forests. And similarly, to estimate the number of tree-proximate people, we used the same forest and population data and the same method for excluding urban areas. And in addition, we used a MODIS land cover product to define agricultural land as a combination of both cropland and pasture land, and then created a data layer of trees on agricultural land defined as places that were not forests, but that did have greater than 10% tree cover. And so we estimated the number of people living within 500 meters, 1 kilometer, and 5 kilometer of trees on agricultural lands. So in a moment, I'll present our estimates of the number of forest and tree proximate people. But first, I wanted to note that one key product of our work is actually the methodology that we developed. And we're very pleased that that methodology is replicable and customizable. All of the data sets we used are updated annually, making them suitable for regularly updating a global indicator. All data are publicly available and free to use, and all data sets are preloaded within the Google Earth Engine platform. We've also published today the code needed to generate the estimates, which is relatively easy to run. And that code is also easy to modify, so it can be readily used by other people, either to replicate and update these estimates or to adapt for their own context and purpose. And so, for example, a user who had access to higher quality forest data or population data at a national or subnational level rather than global could substitute in those data, or they could use alternative definitions of rural areas or use different buffer distances or overlay our estimates with additional data layers, for example, protected areas. So we estimated that globally, 3.27 billion people lived outside of urban areas and within 1 kilometer of a forest of minimum area 1 hectare in 2019. That equates to 75% of the rural population. At 5 kilometers, that number's higher, obviously, 4.17 billion people, representing 95% of the rural population. So that is a large majority of people living in rural areas lived within or close to a forest in 2019. The estimates are, of course, sensitive to the parameters and data used. When we use the most restrictive definitions of forests and rural areas, the most conservative estimate of the number of forest proximate people at 1 kilometer was 1.95 billion people. The vast majority of forest proximate people were in low and middle income countries, and the background paper that we published today contains the full results and estimates and sensitivity analyses. Similarly, we estimated that globally 3.5 billion people lived outside of urban areas and within 1 kilometer of agricultural land with trees outside of forests in 2019. And again, the background paper contains the full results and estimates of those also. There's a number of important caveats to be aware of with this work. To briefly cover a couple, like many estimates, these numbers are sensitive to the data, to the definitions, to the parameters used. For that reason, we present a range of estimates. But importantly, this method is replicable by anyone who has better data or different definitions or parameters. The forest cover data provides or defines forests relatively broadly and also includes, as many tree cover data sets do, tree plantations, which of course many people and agencies do not consider to be forests. The population data we used are dependent on census data, the quality of which varies widely around the world. And finally, we use forest proximity as a proxy for forest dependence, but it's important to reiterate that that's not equivalent. And our estimates don't actually tell us anything about the number of people who actually rely on forests for subsistence or income or ecosystem services. Our next step with this work will be to attempt to introduce a poverty layer to this work. So the indicator that prompted this work is the number of forest-dependent people in extreme poverty. But until recently, there's no suitable data available to do that. But recent advances in machine learning are now allowing researchers to generate data, to generate gridded poverty data that, at least in principle, could be overlaid onto our maps. In sum, we believe that these maps and estimates draw attention to and indicate the relevance of forests and trees to support rural livelihoods and should help decision makers to develop more targeted policies for sustainable landscapes. Our methodology can be adapted and used to create updated estimates and to explore related questions of interest to different researchers. Our estimate is much higher than our previous estimate from 2012, in part a consequence of the different data sets and parameters used. For the first time, we provide global estimates of the number of people living near trees outside of forests. And we believe these estimates could be useful to researchers and decision makers working in the realm of conservation, climate change, sustainable development, and poverty alleviation. And most importantly, given how this work came to be, we're making concrete progress towards the GCS forest-related indicator number 13. So with that, I just want to encourage you again, if you have an opportunity to download the paper, and if you have an opportunity to access and to use the data and code, we'd love to hear back from you if you do use this methodology. Many thanks. I'd be glad to discuss this work with anyone interested in it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, Peter, and thanks again also for, I presume you're in Colorado, so thank you for waking up early also to speak with us today. So it's very interesting work. In fact, I was on Google Earth Engine just this morning, and I saw the data set already there, so looking forward to putting it to work. We don't have time for question and answer. In fact, we're over time for all things, and I'm not quite sure if we have any time remaining. But with the 1 or 2 minutes, we can spare 1 or 2 minutes, I think, Ewald, for a closing remark if you'd like to. We'd be honored.
Well, Eric, honestly, we are honored, all of us participants here in that meeting, to have had these high caliber presentations, discussions. It was really, really inspiring. We started with connecting forests and people, but I think we ended in some ways with one important thing that it rang through a little bit, and I don't know who said it. I think it was Frank Martin. The magic comes with connecting data with people. That's where the magic comes, and that's where I think you have been very, very effective in showing us, on the one hand, the bigger picture of what happens on the technological fronts, in terms of the availability of data, how to process it, how to make it accessible, but then also all the way to applications like in Vietnam on one particular area that is so important to our lives on the planet. How do we stop deforestation? How do we restore land? And how do we do that with people that need to make a living and have income and get out of poverty and get on with a quality of life that we all want for us, for our youth, for our children. And the technology that you have shown today is one really key tool of making this scaling up, of making the right decisions for these land uses, changes the land use from a destructive way to a productive way, be it agroforestry, or be it trees, or be it forests. So it is my great pleasure to thank you all for setting this up, for getting our minds turning in terms of how can we make the best use of all the work that you are investing. And it has been great to hear from NICFI and Marte Senstad on their work. It has been great to hear Tara O'Shea from Planet and Frank Martin Sievert from ESA and Daniel Irwin from NASA on their view of, okay, the big picture, linking the data at a big scale, bringing it down, linking in the private sector with the public and making it available for everybody, democracy of data and transparency. Jelena, David, Shah, and Pham Ngoc Hai just come back from Vietnam, so it has been really impressive to see how you have been able to have a food security in your country and at the same time green your country and make it useful. So it's fantastic to see how you already use those tools, and you have started, of course, with that quite some time ago, but CIPAL is obviously also very good. And Pete, thank you for your presentation on the proximity of forests and people. I think that's also an area where we want to work. In a way, we all want to become a bit more forest dependent. At least that's a forester point of view, because there is a lot of opportunities that forests provide for our quality of life, from storing carbon to securing biodiversity, to having fresh air, income sources, you name it. So we all want to be forest proximate as well as forest dependent in a good way. So with this, thank you once again really for this very, very rich, deep, technical driven, innovation oriented science forum today, for all your contribution. It has been a great honor and pleasure to see your work, and we are looking forward for a similar one in the future with users that bring the magic to the data. Thanks once again, everybody.